Hello everyone. Welcome to Story Hub channel. Discover real stories of wife betrayals, shocking twists and turns and their secrets. Hit the subscribe button and get to our story. My wife suggested we try an open marriage, but once I started seeing other people, she wanted to change the rules. How would you handle that if you were in my shoes? A little over 2.5 years ago, my wife, let's call her Jessica, who's 36, came to me with a huge request. She asked if we could have an open marriage, meaning we'd both be allowed to date others while staying married. Jessica hinted that if I didn't agree, it might lead to us getting divorced, which really freaked me out, especially since we've got 2 kids together. I was desperate to keep our family intact, so after giving it some serious thought, I decided to go along with her plan. But since this was such a major change, I figured we needed some ground rules to keep things from getting too messy. Here's what I came up with. No bringing anyone we date back to our house. Our home should stay a safe space just for us and the kids. We agreed not to date anyone we both know, like friends, family, co-workers, or anyone who could create awkward situations. We also decided to keep this arrangement to ourselves. No need to broadcast it to everyone. For the next couple of years, I was swamped with work. I had a ton of responsibilities. And when I wasn't at work, I wanted to spend every spare moment with our kids. I didn't have the time or energy to think about dating anyone else, so I didn't. My focus stayed on my job and being there for the kids. After Jessica and I agreed to this open marriage, I started feeling pretty uneasy about the whole thing. The idea of her being with someone else and then coming back to our bed really didn't sit well with me, so I decided to move into a different room in the house. From that point on, our relationship changed a lot. We stopped acting like a typical married couple, and more like partners who were just co-parenting. I didn't want to hear anything about who Jessica was seeing or what she was up to when it came to dating. During this time, I was working harder than ever, but I finally hit some major financial milestones. I paid off all our debts, saved up enough for the kids' college, and even started a fund to help them buy their first homes one day. With all that squared away, I didn't need to work so many hours, so I decided to scale back, from 74 hours a week to just 30. Jessica then suggested we borrow money to buy another house and a new car, but I wasn't interested in taking on more debt, especially after just getting out of it. With my new free time, I decided to take a break and have some fun. I took my older son on a road trip across the country, just the 2 of us. We had a blast. When we got back, I focused on fixing up the house, turning the basement into a man cave for myself. I also started working out more, playing sports, and just leading a healthier life overall. After getting things in a good place, I thought it might be a good time to start dating. But I wasn't just looking for a casual fling. I wanted to find someone I could really connect with. Someone who'd be a friend first. I was hoping to find someone I could hang out with, watch movies, enjoy concerts, and just have fun with. And if things felt right, maybe it could turn into something more. I met a few women, but one, let's call her Sarah, really stood out. We just hit it off. We both loved going to concerts, visiting art galleries, attending Comic-Cons, and watching movies. It was a lot of fun. But then Jessica, my wife, suddenly took an interest in my dating life. She wanted to talk about the women I was seeing, but I wasn't comfortable with that. Things got even more tense when I found out she'd been going through my phone. That led to a big argument between us. After all the drama, Jessica brought up something new. She wanted to change how our open marriage worked. She started talking about fixing our marriage, suggesting we go to a counselor to work through our issues. Jessica also mentioned that she wanted us to start sleeping in the same room again and try to have fun together like we used to. It seemed like she was eager to make some big changes to get our relationship back on track. After all the ups and downs, Jessica introduced a new rule for our open marriage. She said that any relationships outside of our marriage should be strictly physical, with no emotional attachment. Plus, she wanted us to start talking openly about our other partners, which was a big shift from how things were before. I was pretty content with how things were going, especially after I started dating Sarah. I told Jessica that I didn't have an issue if she wanted to date someone more seriously and enjoy herself, but I wasn't interested in discussing the details of her dating life. Despite what I said, Jessica stuck to her idea. Now I'm caught in a tough spot, not sure what to do next. On one hand, I'm thinking about whether we should try to fix our marriage, maybe give her ideas a shot. On the other hand, part of me is wondering if it's time to just call it quits and hand over the divorce papers. I'm really torn and could use some advice on what to do now. For the comments before the updates. The truth is, you didn't open your marriage. You ended it 2.5 years ago and became roommates and co-parents. That's really all you are now. But neither of you seem to realize it until you found yourself a girlfriend. You didn't just find a fling. You found a real relationship. And that terrifies your wife because she sees what's happening. Jessica is being a hypocrite, and you've become emotionally numb. You agreed to open the marriage when she asked, but honestly, that was a terrible idea. That was the moment you both should have worked to fix things. Marriages go through rough patches, but instead of addressing the issues with you, she put her emotional energy into someone else. Sorry for the blunt language, but you need a wake-up call. You don't have a marriage anymore. It's just a business arrangement. So what's the point? I think deep down, you already know the answer. Good luck, and I hope you find what you're looking for. This isn't a marriage, it's just a partnership in the business of raising your kids since she decided to open the marriage like that. You've done well, and it's probably the stability at home that allowed you to work those specific 74 hours a week. But this isn't a romantic partnership, and probably hasn't been for a while. I completely understand why you don't want to hear about her dating life. She wanted to open the relationship, and you let it happen. Now she wants to turn it into a shared kink. That's just not right. Now for the update. My wife Jessica and I decided to see a couples counselor to see if we could work things out between us. We've had 2 sessions so far. The counselor we're seeing is really good at their job, very focused and fair. But things haven't been going smoothly. Jessica keeps asking for things that just don't seem fair to me. She wants to keep our marriage open, meaning we can still see other people, but she insists it should only be about sex. On top of that, she doesn't want to look for a job and expects us to buy a new house. It feels like no matter how much we talk, she's stuck on wanting one or more of these things. During our last counseling session, things got really heated. Jessica actually threatened to file for divorce if things didn't go her way. And afterward, she complained that the counselor was taking my side. She thinks we should look for a new counselor, but I believe the one we have is just trying to be fair and help us find a middle ground. It's a tough situation, and I'm still trying to figure out the best way to handle it. So, after all that's been going on, I decided to talk to a lawyer and start the process of getting a divorce. Jessica will be getting the official papers in just a few days. I've also made up my mind to give her a couple of months to figure out how she's going to start earning her own money. Once that time is up, I plan to stop providing her with financial support. I also want to highlight something important about my work situation. After Jessica suggested we open our marriage, that's when I started working those crazy long hours, about 74 hours a week. Before all this, my work week was more like 50 hours. I wasn't out partying or anything like that. I did my best to help around the house and made sure I was home and available every other weekend. So, making the decision to divorce wasn't something I took lightly. It comes after a lot of thought and trying to find a balance in our relationship. Update 2. Story 2. My mother tried to trick me, 26 female, into joining my sister, 31 female, for dinner after she tested me around her husband, 31 male. This is actually pretty wild, so there are going to be lots of details. Bear with me. My sister recently got married. It's been about 3 to 4 months now. I hadn't seen much of them after the wedding, their honeymoon, and then getting back to work. But once a month, our family gets together and my parents host a big dinner. This took place about a week ago, and it was our monthly get-together for August. During the dinner, my brother-in-law was acting really weird toward me. He was complimenting my body, ignoring my sister, and just behaving in a way that was completely out of the ordinary. It was so unexpected for a few reasons. First, his wife, my sister, was sitting right next to me. Second, they've only been married a few months. And third, he's never spoken to me or about me like that before. I felt incredibly uncomfortable, and I'm pretty sure everyone else in the room noticed because... what the heck? But strangely, no one said anything about it. I was really confused and just wanted to get out of there. I left early, but when I got home, I still felt gross. I don't even know how to describe it. So I decided to message my sister and let her know how uncomfortable her husband's behavior made me feel. I also mentioned that it was concerning that he felt comfortable saying those things in front of our parents and brother. I explained that if she didn't feel okay being in the middle of this, I wouldn't mind talking to him myself. His behavior bothered me so much that I FaceTimed my boyfriend, who was away for work in the US. I told him how weird it was, and how my brother-in-law's behavior toward me had gone from treating me like a sibling to creating this horribly awkward situation. He was furious, understandably so. My sister didn't respond to my text until the next day. She asked to meet up, so I agreed. I was expecting her to be upset and to have him apologize for what he said. But instead she told me it was all a test, and I passed. I was baffled. What did she mean by a test? And how did I pass? What was going on? It turns out that she had her husband do those things on purpose because she wanted to see how I'd react if he actually meant them. My reaction and decision to message her afterward apparently proved to her that I could be trusted around him. I was offended, to say the least. Why would she think I couldn't be trusted? And, in my opinion, her reasoning for this whole test wasn't valid at all. My sister has been married before. She was 27 at the time. But the marriage only lasted about 10 months before they got divorced. Her ex-husband was, to put it mildly, a complete psycho. I had actually known him longer than my sister had, and I was the one who introduced them. They hit it off, started dating, and from the outside, their relationship seemed like the picture of health and romance. But things took a turn after they got married. During their marriage, I was living with them because their place was closer to my job. They had extra bedrooms, so I paid rent and took care of my own cooking and cleaning. But then something strange started happening. My underwear, bras, and panties began to disappear. At first, I thought it was just a mix-up with my sister's laundry, and I figured they'd show up eventually. But it kept happening, to the point where I was buying new underwear almost every week. I kept asking my sister if she was the one taking them, but she was adamant that she wasn't. Eventually, I just tried to ignore it and go about my life. What I hadn't even considered turned out to be the real reason. My former brother-in-law was the one stealing my underwear. I have no idea, nor do I want to know what he was doing with them. When I found out, I was absolutely disgusted and confused. This was someone I thought was my friend, but he turned out to be a total creep. He admitted that he had never truly loved my sister and was only using her to get close to me. I was beyond creeped out, and I pressed charges against him for his disgusting behavior. I was able to get a restraining order, and my sister divorced him almost immediately after finding out. What really hurt was how my sister twisted something so traumatic that happened to me and made it seem like I was the one who was untrustworthy. She claimed that I must have led him on for him to think that way, and this recent test was just to prove I wasn't doing it again. Needless to say, I was extremely hurt and angry at her response, so I told her never to speak to me or contact me again if that's really how she saw me. My family found out, and most of them agreed that her behavior was completely out of line. But my mother stood by her, saying my sister was just trying to protect herself from being hurt again. I told my mom that if my sister had just been honest with me from the beginning, I wouldn't have been so upset. There's a right way to handle things, and a wrong way. This wasn't just wrong. It was completely insane. Why was she so adamant that I had some secret agenda to hurt her? I didn't know her ex-husband was going to turn out like that, so why am I being punished? She insisted that I should have somehow known that he had feelings for me. But he really made it seem like he was completely in love with my sister. How am I supposed to know what's going on in someone else's head? The family dinner was earlier this month, as it was the only date that worked for everyone. Yesterday, I told my parents not to expect me if my sister and brother-in-law were going to be there. It wasn't because I refused to ever speak to her again. I had only said that in the heat of the moment, because the situation was so fresh. I told my mother that I would apologize when I had a chance to cool down a bit. It was just hard to face them when they made me feel like I was a terrible person for something that was completely out of my control. My mother assured me that my sister wouldn't be attending, so I agreed to go. But when I arrived, they were both there. It felt like an ambush, and in a way it was. My sister demanded that I apologize for my reaction because she believed it was my fault in the first place. I can't lie, I snapped. I told her she should delete my number and forget she was ever my sister if that's really how she felt. I really need some advice because my next therapy session isn't for another 2 weeks. and I feel like I'm living in some kind of soap opera. I feel a bit guilty because I do understand that my sister had her trust completely shattered by her ex, but I can't help but think that her distrust should be aimed at the person who actually betrayed her, not at me. I already feel bad enough for being the one who introduced her to that jerk in the first place, but I can't wrap my head around how far she went to manipulate me into thinking she's being wronged by her husband all over again. It's just too extreme. I want to apologize to her for one thing, ever introducing that man to her. I really need her to understand that I wasn't involved in any way when her ex was stealing my underwear. I was just as clueless as she was. How do I go about doing that? Because I really want to put all of this behind me and move on. I was just starting to heal from her first marriage, and now this one has put me in a really uncomfortable position with my sister, my brother-in-law, and even my own mother. Any advice on how to tackle this, apologize, regain my sister's trust, and show her that I genuinely just want what's best for her? P.S. Sorry if there are any spelling or grammar mistakes. It's 2 a.m., and I usually go to bed around 10 p.m. Some parts of this might not make sense, so I'm more than happy to clarify if needed. The comments. I'm just so exhausted that my brain is barely functioning at this point. Now for the update. A lot has happened in the past few days. I've tried to read through all the comments and take everyone's advice. Here's where things stand. I lost both a sister and a mother in the span of 2 days. It's more heartbreaking than anything else. I had to meet up with everyone, and thankfully, my boyfriend came with me for support during the conversation. Honestly, it was incredibly difficult to look any of them in the eye after the way they treated me. I'm so grateful to everyone who helped open my eyes to the craziness of what went down in the first part of this story. In front of everyone, my mother admitted that she knew about the plan from the beginning. My sister had confided in her, and my mom actually thought it was a good idea. She supported her son-in-law in openly harassing her own daughter. I'm still in complete shock, and it hurts so much knowing she would condone something like that, especially since she knew how much I was affected by my sister's first husband. She was well aware that I was having a hard time in therapy. It took me a long time to trust people again after that, and now I feel like my trust has been shattered all over again. I don't know how I'm ever going to trust anyone ever again. I'm really thankful that my boyfriend was there to comfort me because it was so hard to keep my composure around them. My sister wasn't budging at all. She kept insisting that she was in the right. She said the only reason I wouldn't apologize is because deep down, I knew what her ex was like. She claimed that I enjoyed getting attention from him, even though he was married to my sister. She also accused me of overreacting, saying that if it's just an act, then it's not harassment. I told her not to expect any calls, texts, or any contact from me until I get the apology I deserve from both her and my brother-in-law. As for him, he was pretty silent throughout the whole ordeal, probably because my dad threatened his life if he said anything bad about me. He did mention that the only reason he went along with it was to appease my sister, who kept accusing him of ogling me. But still, no apology from him. My mother. This one hurt me the most. She told me that I was exaggerating and that I should be glad I passed my sister's test. She even said, "We can all move on now." I was completely floored. How could she possibly think everything would just go back to normal after this? I asked her why she was supporting such irrational behavior, and she said it was because she loves my sister and just wants her to be happy. I asked if she loved me as much as she loves my sister. She said yes, but there was a hesitation in her voice that I'm trying not to overthink. I told her I wanted an apology for the whole scheme. She refused. So I gave her the same conditions I gave my sister and brother-in-law. Until I get an apology, I won't be speaking to any of them. As a result, I'll probably have to go low contact with my brother and dad because they both live with my mother. I mean, I'll hang out with them outside of the house, away from her, but that depends on whether she'll even allow it. Some of you suggested that I spend holidays and special occasions with my boyfriend's family. I think it was just one person, but still. I haven't met my boyfriend's family yet because they live in the United States, but after everything that's happened, I've taken 2 weeks of paid leave at the end of this month, and he's taking me to meet them for the first time. I really hope it goes well, because they might be the only family I have right now. I've managed to move my therapy session up to tomorrow by requesting an emergency appointment. Wish me luck. Anyway, I want to extend my deepest thanks to all of you for helping me see the situation for what it truly was. Your advice and compassion have meant the world to me, and I'm incredibly grateful. I don't think I could have gotten through this on my own. I probably would have caved and apologized, only for the cycle to repeat itself. So truly, thank you so much. I wish you all the best and hope your lives are filled with love and happiness. I'll remember this moment whenever I'm tempted to put someone else's feelings above my own well-being. P.S. Once again, I apologize for any spelling and grammar mistakes. It's late, but I felt I owed you all an update. Story 3. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my sister out when I'm the only family member she lives close to and she has kids? I'm a 31-year-old woman, and I haven't spoken to my sister in 10 years after she had an affair with my ex. My ex and I were together from the time we were 15 until we were 20. My sister was 19 when the affair started, and it likely began shortly after she turned 18. My ex was the same age as me. He proposed to me while we were still together. My sister helped him plan the proposal and encouraged me to marry him. She did this so that he would be around more, and they could keep sleeping together. We got engaged, and a few months later, my sister dropped a bombshell. She was pregnant with his child. She tried to salvage our relationship and asked me not to be angry with her. I told her she was disgusting and that I would never forgive her. I also told our parents what she had done. I saw my sister once after their first child was born, about a year after I found out about the affair. She told me she missed me and wanted her daughter to know her aunt. She tried her best to get me to at least have a relationship with her daughter, but I told her it wasn't possible. I told her I still couldn't forgive her and that she should never speak to me again. My parents and extended family also stopped talking to her when she started dating him seriously, but they reconnected with her after they broke up. They eventually supported her because of the kids. My parents couldn't bring themselves to completely turn their backs on their grandkids or sever the relationship forever. I was okay with it because I understood where they were coming from, but her having kids wasn't a reason for me to try to repair our relationship. I'm now happily married and a mom myself. A few weeks ago, my parents called to tell me that my sister has been living just 20 minutes away from me for the last 2 years. They know I don't want to talk about her, so they hadn't mentioned it until now. She had moved out of state for a job, but then she lost the job, and her landlord gave her 60 days to move out because he was repurposing the house. With no job and no support network here, she had to turn to our parents. She didn't want to uproot her kids from the place they'd grown accustomed to, so my parents decided that I should be the one to help. They told me it would be amazing if I could help by connecting her with people for a job or maybe finding another rental. They wanted me to step in before her 60 days were up. I refused to help and told them I would never do anything for her again. They pleaded with me to reconsider and urged me to think about the kids. They asked if I really hated my sister that much, and I said yes. I told them it was bad enough that she was the affair partner, but to encourage me to get engaged and help him plan the proposal while they were cheating behind my back was an incredibly low thing to do. I said the fact that she stayed with him long enough to have another child only showed how little she actually cared about me. They told me to be a better person than this. So, am I the jerk?